Hey, so welcome everyone to this DataSnipper session. This is a very special webinar as we will talk about tips and tricks. My name is Edwin and I'm an audit transformation manager here at DataSnipper. But before joining this company, I was an auditor myself, so I know the struggle that you are going through in busy season. I really hope that with this session, you will save valuable time in your day-to-day work as you learn more about this product. As I'm sure you are familiar with, in most of our trainings, we use Menti.com to make the session more interactive. So I will give you a few minutes to log into Menti.com. You can either type in Menti.com into your browser and use the login code seen on the left-hand side of the screen. Or if you have your phone at your hand, you can scan the QR code on the right-hand side. I will also log into Menti.com because then you can see the slide deck in your phone all the time, as I will be jumping back and forth in the slide deck and in the Excel workbook, since I will be demonstrating each features of DataSnipper in there. I will give you a few seconds to log into Menti.com. And again, you can use the code on the left-hand side, or you can scan the QR code on the right-hand side with your phone. Okay, I hope everyone had the chance to log into Menti.com. So let's start with some icebreaker questions, just to set the right mood. My first question is, where are you from? You can place a small dot using Menti.com. Oh, I can see that we have people all around the world. We have a very diverse group today and also a big one. A lot of people from the US, Europe, Africa, and Australia, India. That is great. I always love to see that when we have a diverse group, and in today's session, that's exceptionally true. And my next question is, where do you think the fortune cookies were invented? There are nearly 100 answers already. That's really interesting. Basically, we receive most answers to these types of questions, to the actual ones that are asking about DataSnipper. So let's see the results. And yes, most of you got it correct. The fortune cookies were invented in the USA, at least according to the Wikipedia side. Okay, now that we are over these icebreaker questions, let's see our agenda for today. First, I will show you some tips and tricks for DataSnipper. I will use a slide deck for that and also an Excel workbook where I will showcase each feature of DataSnipper. After that, we will jump into some frequently asked questions and I will provide you the answer live. And also, if we still have some time, we will leave some time for Q&As in the end. But as always, feel free to post your questions in the Q&A section of Zoom. I have my colleague Justin with me, who is moderating the Q&A section. So if you have questions at any time during the presentation, just post them in the Q&A section of Zoom. Now let's start with the tips and tricks. First, we will talk about manual snipping in general. And the first tip that I want to show you is how you can copy and paste a snip in your workbook. Now I will switch to my Excel workbook here. Maybe you are already familiar with that example from our introduction training. But now in this workbook, you can see that text snips are already created. And when I click on them, it will navigate the document viewer to the part of the document where this information is present. Now, of course, you may want to move this into another sheet in your Excel workbook, and you can easily do that by selecting all these snips, copying, so pressing Ctrl+C, and pasting by pressing Ctrl+V in another sheet. Now you can see that the cross-references are also pasted into that part of the workbook. And if you click on them, it will navigate you to the part of the document where this information is present. But you can also see on the formula bar that it creates a formula which indicates that these snips also belongs to this sheet. Now you can easily easily delete this formula. If you go back to the snips that you just created, selecting them, and instead of copying and pasting, you can cut the snips. So I cut the snips by pressing Ctrl and X and pasting it here in the test book. Now you can see that the formula bar is not populated with that formula. Instead, the cell data is shown here. And if you click through these results, you can see the cross-references between your Excel workbook and the imported supporting document. So that's how you can copy and paste the snips in your Excel workbook. Now let's see the next tip. So how you can customize the cell styles of the snips. As I'm sure that you are aware of, each snips has a different cell style. So for example, when you place a text snip, it will create a blue cell in your workbook. When you create a validation snip, it will create a green cell. With exception snip, it's a red cell. With sum snip, it's a yellow cell. But you can easily change the format of these cells by going to the home page in your Excel workbook, and you can change the colors here. For example, if you want to make them transparent, you have the option to do that. You can change the font as well. You can change the size of the text. And if you click on the cells, you can see that the cross-references are still visible. So if you change the cell style, it's still then you still have the cross-references between your workbook and the supporting documents. Let's see our next tip for today. How to adjust size and position of the snips. So you can easily do that, and I will show you how. So here we have this purchases walkthrough example, and you can see that under the supplier name for the proposal, the wrong data is snipped into our Excel workbook. Now we can easily change the position of the snip by clicking on the snip itself. And you can just drag that snip into another part of the document. Let's select the supplier name for that example. And now you can see that the cell content also changed by moving that snip to another part of the supporting document. You can also adjust the size of the snip by selecting the snip, holding down the left mouse button, and you can easily change the size of that snip. If you select new data in the supporting document, you can see that the cell content will change automatically, and you can easily change it back by changing the size of that snip. Let's see our next tip for today. And it is the search and snip. This is a very powerful function of DataSnipper. Basically, you can imagine the search and snip as a very powerful Control F in your Excel, which means that you can easily search for information in the imported supporting documents. Now you can do that by navigating to the search bar in the document viewer, which is visible here on the right-hand side. And here you can type in any information that you want. For example, I will search for 21%. Click on the search button. And now you can see that where this 21% is present in the imported supporting documents. Now, when you hover your mouse over these results, you can easily see the part of the document where this information is present, and you can easily create cross-references by clicking on that blue snip button here. So when I click on that, it will make a cross-reference between the supporting document and my Excel workbook. So now when I click back on these results, I can see the supporting document on the right-hand side where this information is present. Now, if you pay close attention, you can see that the formula bar is also automatically populated with the cell content that I currently select. So for example, when I want to search for that total amount, and create cross-references for the order, the invoice, and the payment as well. I can easily do that without adding anything to the search bar by selecting the total amount on the proposal, which is data that is already present in my Excel workbook. Selecting the cells where I want the snips to be created. And you can see that the search bar is automatically populated with the total amount on the proposal. And I can just click on the search icon. And now I can make the text snips that I want. So I need the total amount from the order, the invoice, and the bank statement. And you can see that since I selected these cells, the text snips are placed in the document where I wanted. So now the total amount is snipped from the order, the invoice, and the payment using the search and snip functionality of DataSnipper. Now jumping back to the presentation, let's see our next snip, which is to change the snip direction. Now, as I'm sure that you are already familiar with that, but if you place a snip, let's use the validation snip for that example. DataSnipper will create a snip to the next available cell on the right-hand side. But if you want to change that direction, you have the option to do that. So instead of going from left to right, you can change the direction from top to bottom by selecting the empty cells where you want this place to be placed. And now when I create a snip, you can see that instead of going from left to right, the snips are going from top to bottom. And again, that's because I selected the cells where I want these snips to be placed. Now you also have the option to select multiple columns and rows. Let's see what happens then. If I select 2 columns, and in that example, 4 rows, and place snips right next to each other, you can see that first it goes from left to right, but the next snip that I create goes from top to bottom. And the next snip will go from left to right, and that's because 2 columns are selected. So if you want to change the direction of the snips, you just need to select the cells where you want these snips to be created. Let's see our next tip for today. So how you can make multiple snips in the same cell. Now this is a very useful functionality. If you want to create multiple cross-references into the same cell, you can do that for text snip, validation snip, exception snip, and sum snip. That function is not working for table snip, but let's see how it works for validation snip, for example. If I jump to this authorization cell, you can see that a validation snip has been placed over the signature on the proposal. But let's assume that we want to check the signature list of that company as well. I can easily navigate to that document using the document viewer. And here we can see that Peter Smith is an authorized signatory within the company. Now, if I want to highlight that I have checked this information as well on the imported supporting documents, I can include multiple snips into the same cell by holding down the control button and selecting that part of the document as well. And after releasing the left mouse button, now you can see that 2 snips belongs to this cell. And if I open this drop-down menu and hover my mouse over these snips, it will navigate me to the part of the document where this snip have been created. Now let's see how it works for the text snip. So let's select text snip for that. And I will create a text snip over this text. And by holding down the control button, I will also add that text snip as well. Now you can see that the formula bar is generated with the 2 text strings that I just selected with text snip. There's also a line here. So it's a separator between the 2 snips that I just added into that cell. And you can see that from both cells, the text strings are extracted into our Excel workbook. Now we covered validation snip. It works the same way with the exception snip as well. So if I place a snip and hold down the control button and place another snip in the document, now you can see that 2 snips belongs to this cell as well. But I think that the most useful snip for that demonstration is the sum snip, as with that option, you can easily add up numeric data from several documents easily. So first, I will create a sum snip over that invoice. I will navigate to another invoice, and I can easily add this number to that sum snip as well by holding down the control button. And if you see the formula bar, you can see that this amount is also added in the formula bar. So the sum snip now adds up the numeric data from both invoices in one cell. Let's jump back into the slide deck. So how you can delete snips? You can easily delete snips, and there are multiple ways to do that. First, you can use the document viewer. Let's assume that you have several snips in one cell, but one of them was placed incorrectly. Then you have the option to navigate to the part of the document where you created the snip in the document viewer, and just right-click on the snip and click on Delete Snip. Now you can see that only one snip belongs to this cell, and that snip from the supporting document is deleted. Let's do it one more time. So you can right-click on the snip in the document viewer, click on Delete Snip, and now the cross-reference is deleted in your Excel workbook. You can also select several snips in your document. And after selecting all these snips, you can click on the Delete Snips button here in the DataSnipper ribbon, which is right next to document matching. And after clicking on that, now you can see that all the cross-references that we just created are now deleted because we clicked on the Delete Snips button. The next thing I want to show you is how to change a text snip to a validation or an exception snip. This is especially powerful if you have a deviation in your test of details procedure. So I will navigate to a test of details procedure here. You can see that I ran document matching for that example, but some cells are left empty. And as I'm sure that all of you know, the reason for that is that document matching was not able to identify exact matches for this data. So let's see the first one where no text snip have been created over the amount. And you can see it here that the total amount on the invoice differs from our selection. So in that case, we want to mark it as an exception snip. But instead of typing in the total amount manually, first you can create a text snip over that document by clicking on the text snip. Let's select the total amount on that invoice. Now you can see that the data is extracted into the Excel workbook, so you don't have to manually type that in. But since there's a difference, you want to highlight this as an exception, and you have the option to do that by going to the snip, right-clicking on that, and you have the option to change it either to a validation snip or an exception snip. In that case, I will change it to an exception snip. Now you can see the red highlight in the document viewer and also in your Excel workbook as well, meaning that there is an exception in your test work. And of course, it works for validation snip as well. So if I go back to that total amount, right-click on that, I can easily change it to a validation snip. I can change it back to a text snip. But since it's an exception, let's leave it red and change it back to an exception snip. Now the next tip is how to use a table snip to snip text in a paragraph format. So before demonstrating that, first I want to give you a quick recap of how TableSnip actually works. And first I will demonstrate you the automatic TableSnip. So if I go to the trial balance report, you can see on the document viewer that the tabular data is automatically recognized by DataSnipper. And there's also this blue Snip All Tables button here. So you can easily extract tabular data into your Excel workbook by clicking on that blue Snip All Tables button. And now you can see that the tabular data is automatically extracted. Now you can also change the size of that snip as well by pressing the left mouse button on the corner of that tabular data. And let's include the header row as well. So when I release the left mouse button, now you can see that the header data is also visible there. We also have the option to change the column separators by clicking on the minus icon here. And you can see that your Excel data is also transformed automatically. I can also add the column separator by clicking on the plus icon. So again, if you want to change your column separators, you can click on the minus icon to delete one, or click on the plus icon on the top to add the new one. You also have the option to do the same for rows by clicking on these three dots. And after clicking on that, you need to click on Edit Rows. And now we can add the row separator or remove one. You can see that the header row is not separated from the first row. So I can easily just add the row separator between the header data and my first row. And now you can see that the tabular data is extracted in my Excel workbook, basically with just a click of a button. But let's assume that you want to extract only the revenue data from the trial balance report. You also have the option to do that by using the manual table snip, which is that purple icon on the DataSnipper ribbon. And after clicking on that, now you just need to select the revenue data in the trial balance report. And now you can also do the same edits as we did with the automatic table snip by adding a column separator or removing one. And this is the most common use case for the table snip, but I also want to show you how you can get text data in a paragraph format using table snip. For that, I will use an annual report. So after I navigate to that, let's find a nice paragraph that we want to extract. I will just scroll down a bit. Now here we have a text data, which is in a paragraph format. And of course, we can use TextSnip as well to get this information easily. But if I use TextSnip, you can see that, that now all the text is extracted into one cell. So instead of doing that, let's use TableSnip to get the data, and I will show you how you can format that as well. So I will just select all the text that I want to extract into my Excel workbook. And after placing that manual table snip over the data, so again, you can click on the purple table snip icon and place a manual table snip over that text string that you want to extract. Now, all you need to do is click on these three dots, click on Edit Rows, and now you can add or remove the row separators. I will just remove these row separators. I will also remove this one. And now you can see that the data is now extracted in paragraphs in your Excel workbook. So if you want to extract text from a supporting document, think about it that you can do it with TableSnip as well, because it will also separate the data for you with just a few clicks. Now I want to talk about document management in general. And first, let's cover what type of supporting documents are supported by DataSnipper. You can easily check that information by going to the DataSnipper tab and by clicking on the Import Documents button. Here on the right-hand side, you can see all the file types that are supported by DataSnipper. You can include PDFs, JPEGs, doc files, Excel files, email files, basically anything that you receive from your client. There are two file types I want to talk about in more detail. One of them is how it looks like when you import an Excel into your Excel workbook. So for that, I will import this Excel file. And after clicking on Open, you can see that the sheets are separated into PDFs. And all the sheets from that Excel file are imported. It's very important to note that DataSnipper only imports those sheets where there is data in the cells. So for example, if you only have one image in a sheet, then DataSnipper won't import that sheet because there's no text data there. If you want to import that sheet as well, together with the image, I would suggest to put any text in that sheet, for example, one in cell A1. So in that case, if you import that Excel file into DataSnipper, then that sheet will also be imported together with the picture that is present in that Excel sheet. Now the next file type I want to show you how you can import are email files. So again, I will click on the Import Documents button. And here you can see an Outlook item file. I sent an email to myself, which contains several invoices. And it's very important to note that when you import an Outlook item into DataSnipper, it will also import the attachments that are visible in that email. So let's click on Open. And here you can see the email that I sent. So here is the text data of the email. But if I scroll down, these are the attachments that are included in that email file. So again, if you import an email file, it will also import the attachments as well in that same file. I will quickly open that file just to show it to you. So here you can see that there are several attachments in that Outlook file, and these attachments are also imported into DataSnipper. Now I will pause here for a moment, as I can see that there is one question in the Q&A section. Justin, can you update me on the questions, or are you answering them?
Hi, Edwin. Yeah, I'm busy answering it at the moment, but it might be nice for you to address it verbally. So the question is, when I change the table snip horizontally and want that change to apply to all pages, it doesn't seem to work. Is that possible to do so? I'm in the process of answering it. Essentially, and yes, you might want to show it, but essentially any edits to the horizontal, so the rows themselves won't be applied to every single column.
So basically the question here is that when you change the row separators, they are not visible on the following pages.
Yeah, that's the way I've interpreted that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so if you change the rows, then they won't be transferred into the other pages, as it is unique data for every row. You can repeat the table snip for the following pages as well by clicking on the Repeat Following Pages button in these three dots. But in case the rows are not recognized correctly, you have to make those adjustments manually in the following pages as well. But in most cases, the rows are recognized correctly. If not, you can always try out the recognize text button here. I will talk about that later as well. So if the rows are not recognized correctly, just click on recognize text and try to run table snip again. So Justin, let me know if there are any more questions which needs demonstration.
Will do. I'm just busy working through the list at the moment. It seems fine for now.
Okay, great. Then I will continue with the presentation. So the next thing is the import options. Oh, sorry. So the import options. So you have several ways to import documents into DataSnipper. First, of course, you have the general import button, which is visible here. And if you open the import documents that way, then you have the option to select documents and import them together after clicking on open. You also have the option to import documents by clicking on this drop-down menu, and you can import from a folder. If you click on that, a new tab will appear, and now you have to navigate to the folder which you want to import. Let's see, I want to import these bank statements and the invoices, and after clicking on that, I won't select neither the invoices and the bank statement subfolder, as I want both of them to be imported. After clicking on OK and waiting a few seconds, now you can see that the invoices and the bank statements are also imported. Also, you can use Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V as well. So if you navigate to any folder and select a file and press Ctrl+C, I will just import this email file, go back to your Excel workbook and press Ctrl+V. DataSnipper will ask you if you want to import the files that you just selected. In that case, I will say yes. And you can see that the file is imported into the document, into that workbook as well. Now, another nice thing how you can import documents is by copying and pasting the snips. This may sound surprising, but let's go to that walkthrough example. And here you can see that the proposal is imported into that document, and we have created an authorization cell for that. Now, if I copy this snip in that workbook, navigate to another workbook and press Ctrl+V, you can see that the snip is transferred. And also the document is imported where that snip has been created. So if you have snips in one Excel workbook and you want to transfer it to another one, you can do that. And it will also transfer the supporting documents into that workbook as well. So those cross-references will be visible in that document. So the next tip I want to show you is the include or exclude PDFs in Excel button. Now for that, I will navigate back to the import folder Excel workbook. And here on the DataSnipper ribbon, you can see this include PDFs in Excel button, which is automatically turned on, which means that whenever you import a supporting document into your Excel workbook, it will be embedded in your Excel, which means that if you send it to your colleague, they will be able to see the cross-references together with the supporting documents in that Excel workbook as well. Now, if I turn this option off, so if I turn this option off and click on OK, now the supporting documents are not part of my Excel workbook. So again, this will reduce the size of your Excel workbook as well. But if at any time you lose access to the folder from where you imported those supporting documents, the cross-references won't be visible in that case. So first, I will create a quick text snip over a supporting document. And since I turned this option off, now I will delete the invoices and the bank statements from here. And this is the folder I imported into DataSnipper. And now if I click on other invoices, you can see that the file not found. And that's because I deleted those invoices from the folder where I imported them. So if you turn this option off and you lose access or delete the documents in that folder, then the cross-references won't be visible. For some reason, this invoice is still visible on the right-hand side. Usually that is not the case, but this invoice might belong to another folder. But again, if you turn this option off and lose access to the folder, then it means the cross-references won't be visible in your Excel workbook anymore, but this option is automatically turned on. So at any case you import a document into the workbook, it will be embedded within your Excel file. Now jumping back to the presentation. So let's see how you can edit a document using the document viewer. We'll navigate back to this tips and tricks Excel file. And let's see it on that annual report. So we have the document viewer opened, but let's assume that you received a scanned copy from your client and you need to rotate that document. Now you have the option to do that by right-clicking on the page which you want to rotate, and you can see these options. You can rotate the page clockwise. If you click on that, it will just take a few seconds to rotate it. You can rotate it counterclockwise. You have the option to remove the page. And you also have the option to remove all pages except within a range. So here, if you add the range of 1 to 10, maybe click on OK. Now you can see that there are only 10 pages in that annual report, and before that there were more than 100. So that's how you can edit your documents using the document viewer. Now, continuing with the document management, let's see how you can add comments on the imported documents. So when you add the comment, it is especially useful for the reviewer as well, or if you want to send that document to your client or anyone who doesn't have DataSnipper installed, then they won't be able to see the cross-references, but you will have the option to add the comment and send a commented version of that supporting document for them, so they don't need DataSnipper to see those comments. You can easily add the comment by clicking on the comment button on the DataSnipper tab, which is right next to TableSnip, and delete snips. You can just select any part of your supporting document, add the comment here, and now that comment is visible in the document viewer. You can move that comment just as you would do with the snips. You can adjust the size as well. And when you export that document, which is the invoice.pdf, and after clicking on OK, now you just need to select the part of the document where you want this export to be made. And now you can see that, the snips and the comments are not visible. And that's because if you want them to make visible, you have to click on the export button again, search for the comment, and here you can see that 2 snips belongs to this document. And if you want to include that in your export as well, You also have to turn on the export with snips and comments option on. So after clicking on that and clicking on OK, I already have a document with that name. So I will just select another folder. Now you can see the extracted data, and it also contains a comment as well, and also the snip that we created before. So let's see how you can hide confidential information on the imported documents. So let's assume that you received confidential information from your client and you want to hide that information, for example, a payslip run. So at any time another colleague of yours opens that document, then they won't be able to see that information. You can easily hide confidential information by clicking on the Remove button on the DataSnipper tab. And you have the option to redact certain text in the imported documents. After clicking on that, now you can place redactions. I will just hide the employee name. And now all I need to do is right-click on the redaction that I just created and click on Apply All Redactions. And by placing that redaction in the supporting documents, then the next time you open this Excel workbook, this information won't be visible. There's no option to delete these redactions, so you can easily hide confidential information in the imported supporting documents. Now let's see how you can reduce the size of the imported documents. So there can be a case when you import hundreds of supporting documents into one Excel workbook. And since this include PDFs in Excel option is automatically turned on, these supporting documents will be embedded within your Excel file. Now that can greatly increase the size of that Excel workbook, but you have the option to reduce that by clicking on the Remove button. And here you have the option to compress the imported documents. And after clicking on that, DataSnipper will compress the documents. And it's very important to note that with this option, the quality of the supporting documents won't be affected. It is only a technical way to reduce the size of the supporting documents. So if you have a very large Excel file because you imported a lot of documents, always remember that you have the option to reduce that size by clicking on the Remove button and clicking on the Compress Imported Documents. Here you can see that, there was a reduction of 41%, so it greatly reduced the size of my Excel workbook. Well, of course, I don't have that many supporting documents imported at the moment, so these 3 megabytes doesn't sound too much, but let's imagine that you have hundreds of invoices imported, then that 41% compression can mean a lot when it comes to the size of your Excel workbook. Now going further, let's see how you can view the imported documents on a second screen. So let's assume that you are using a monitor in your day-to-day work and you want this document viewer to be visible on that second screen. You have the option to do that by clicking on the viewer icon on the DataSnipper ribbon. And here you have the option to show this document viewer on a second screen. Now what it does is that after you click on that, you can see that a new window now appeared. At the moment, I'm not using a second screen, but if I would, I can easily just hover this data into my second screen, so that the document viewer will be visible there. Now jumping back to the presentation, let's see how you can close the document viewer temporarily. So let's assume that you don't want to make snips, you are just working on another documentation in your Excel workbook, but since you have documents imported, the document viewer automatically popped up on the right-hand side. Now you can easily close that temporarily by clicking on the viewer icon here on the DataSnipper ribbon. And here you have the option to close the document viewer. After clicking on that, now you can see that the document viewer closed on the right-hand side. I can see the full Excel sheet in my computer. I can also make the document viewer reappear by clicking on the viewer icon here. And by clicking on the Show in Excel, the document viewer will appear again here on the right-hand side. Now, before jumping into document matching, I would like to ask Justin if there is any question which needs a live presentation, or are you dealing with them?
Good timing, good timing. I do have one question. Is there a way to convert all PDF pages to Excel if the pages have a different structure?
Okay, so is there a way to convert all PDF pages to Excel?
So I think the discussion is around DataSnipper. And if there are different structures of tables, is there a way to extract all the data?
Yes, I'm just thinking if I have a right document to showcase that. Well, I will just show it over this trial balance report. I know it doesn't have a different structure in the pages, but a good way to overcome in this situation is to use manual table snip. So if I click on the DataSnipper ribbon and click on table snip, let's assume that on the first page, the tabular data is different than from the second page. Then here I would just create a manual table snip on the first page. So I will get this data extracted into my Excel workbook. I would just scroll down to the end of that tabular data, click on the first cell, scroll down to the second page in the trial balance report, and I would just create an other table snip here. And now I have the option to separately edit the second page. So if it has a different structure, then I can easily use other column or row separators for that data. I hope that answers your question. If not, then please post a clarification in the Q&A section and we can talk about that in more detail. Is there any question that needs to be demonstrated? Okay, I can see that the Q&A section is handled very well by Justin. So jumping back into the presentation, let's see some document matching tips and tricks. So the first one is to make an input mandatory. For that, I will navigate to my document matching tab here. And here you can see that document matching was not able to find an exact match for the invoice number, but it created a snip on the amount since there was an exact match in the imported supporting documents. Now, in that case, it's very likely that we received the wrong invoice from our client since the invoice number differs from our selection. So in that case, we don't want any data to be pulled into our Excel workbook. Now, in that case, we can make a field required in document matching by navigating to the document matching tab. Here you can see that the document matching is already configured. Now, for some reason, yes, now it's showing the correct information. So if I go back to the document matching tab, here you can see the invoice number on the bottom, and I can easily make that field mandatory by clicking on the three dots right next to it. And here you can see the advanced matching options of document matching. And the first option is to make a column required. Now, after clicking on that and clicking on OK, you can see that the three dots turn to green, which means that an advanced feature is turned on for that attribute. And after clicking on Match All Rows, I would expect that the amount won't be snipped for row 11, as the invoice number is not visible on that supporting document. And here you can see that the amount is now left empty because we made the invoice number a mandatory column. So if you turn this feature on and DataSnipper is not able to find an exact match for that attribute, then it will leave that row empty. Now the next advanced document matching option is the deviation. Let's see how you can allow a deviation. If I click on that example, here you can see that the amount is not snipped from the supporting document. Now in that case, let's see what is the difference. We can see that it can be just a rounding difference since it's only 0.5 euros. If I want to eliminate these rounding differences in document matching, we can allow a deviation up to a certain amount by going to the document matching configuration. And now we will click on the three dots right next to the amount. The second option I want to show you is this allow differences up to a certain amount. The automatic data is 1, and I will leave it as 1 as I only want to eliminate the rounding differences. And after clicking on OK, again, you can see that the three dots turn to green. So from a reviewer's perspective, if they are checking the configuration of document matching, they will be able to see if there is an advanced feature turned on and check on the amount of deviation allowed. Now, since I turned this option on, and after clicking on Match All Rows, I would expect that row 22 will be snipped. Now you can see that the amount is snipped from the invoice since it's within the range of the allowed deviation that we just set for document matching. Now let's assume that you created the document groups, but included some documents that you didn't want. You have the option to edit your document groups by going back to the configuration of document matching. And here, right next to the document number, you have this little pencil icon. And after clicking on that, you can see all the documents that are imported. You have the option to edit the group name. You have the option to exclude documents or include other ones if you imported more into DataSnipper. And after clicking on OK, you can see that the name changed and also the number of documents that belongs to this group. So again, if you want to edit your group settings, just click on the small pencil icon right next to the document number. Now going back to the presentation, let's see how you can create multiple tests or tabs. So here in the test of details procedure, you can see that we performed a three-way match. So between the invoices and the bank statements and our selection. We did it in one test, but let's assume that you want to separate those two tests. You can easily do that by clicking on that plus icon, which is right in the top right corner of the document matching tab. Here is the plus icon. And here you can see that an additional test has been created in our document matching tab. So here I will just delete all the snips in that document matching exercise. And the amounts are also deleted. But in that case, we only want to include the invoices in that test. We can do that by clicking on the invoices, setting the header row, setting the input columns, and after clicking on Match All Rows, you can see that only the invoices are generated. But if I click back on the first test, where we also included the bank statements, if I click on Match All Rows, it will also generate the output columns for the bank statements. So that's how you can create separate tests. And this is especially useful when you are dealing with a large set of data with different attributes, In that case, create separate tests for those matchings by clicking on that plus icon here. Now let's see form extraction. I will include all these three in that presentation just to save some time, as we only have 3 minutes left. So let's go to form extraction and see how you can edit the snips, the keys, and how you can create templates. So I will select the payslip run for that example. And here we will select the extract per page option. As we have data in different pages, you can see that we apply the reduction for this document, and it is also visible in the form extraction as well. Now, after clicking on the blue Add Extraction button, let's export the employee ID from that document. Now, after clicking on that, for some reason, form extraction is now not working for me. I will just open another document for that. So I will open another Excel workbook and set up a form extraction here. So let's see if it works now. Now, after selecting the first name, you can see the extraction here. But let's assume that you place this extraction incorrectly. You have the option to edit the snips by clicking on the 3 dots right next to it and clicking on the edit button. And here you can adjust the snip size easily, just as you would do with a text snip in your document. And also, as I'm sure that you are aware of, form extraction works with keywords. So it will search for that keyword in the following documents as well and place a text snip within the same distance of that keyword and the text snip. You can see the keyword selected by hovering your mouse over the extraction, and the blue highlight is the extraction and the yellow one is the keyword. Now, if you want to edit that keyword, you can easily do that by clicking on the 3 dots and edit the key. And now you can select a keyword which is unique throughout the document. Now you also have the option to save this as a template by clicking on a Save as Template, adding a name here. And after clicking on OK, now this template is visible in your My Templates folder. So if you receive a document which has the same structure where you created that template, you can just click on that, import the forms that you want to run this template on, and on the right-hand side, the extractions will be automatically visible. Now the time is up, and these were all the tips and tricks that I wanted to show you in today's session. I hope that that you learned a lot about each DataSnipper functionalities today. And as always, we always try to improve our presentations. So we would like to hear your feedback as well about this session. You can find the link on the left-hand side if you are still logged into menti.com, or you can just scan the QR code on the right-hand side. You can anticipate another tips and tricks webinar in the future as well, where we will cover other functionalities of DataSnipper, as I'm sure that you have seen that I have several other slide decks as well, which I couldn't present in today's session. So again, if you participated in this session, please leave a feedback by using the link on the left-hand side or scan the QR code on the right-hand side. Thank you very much for your attention and happy snipping. I will stay in this webinar for a few more minutes to see if there are any more questions in the Q&A section. You can see that there is a question about how do we get to know about any such next section. You can check the DataSnipper website, and there we have an events and webinar page, and there you can sign up for any upcoming webinars in the future. Yes, you can get a recording of this session by sending an email to learn@datasnipper.com. I will type in the email address in the chat section, and you can request a recording there, but we also want to distribute it automatically after this session. But if you don't receive one, please send an email to learn@datasnipper.com.